We continue the coverage now. Fox News alert. The amount of bomb-making materials and ammo found in the San Bernardino suspect's home is staggering. Hi, everyone. I'm Gretchen Carlson. This is the real story on that today. Still no motive after a slaughter at the Christmas celebration by a husband and wife dressed in tactical gear, quote, on a mission. The SWAT team sent to the building where health department workers rented a space for that party. By the time they got there, the shooters were gone, taking the lives of 14 of the gunman's co-workers, injuring now 21 others. At their home, investigators found what can only be described as an IED factory, including 12 pipe bombs, along with hundreds of tools used to construct them. There was also more potential bomb-making materials. As for ammo for their legally purchased guns, we have 2,000 9mm rounds, 2,500 .223 rounds, as well as long rifle rounds. At the shootout scene where 2 officers were injured and the suspects died, there were 3 pipe bombs taped together with remote-controlled car parts to try and make one big bomb. 76 rifle rounds were fired at officers alone. In the suspect's rental truck, 1,400 .223 rounds and 209mm handgun rounds. Those suspects wearing tactical vests to hold all their ammo, but not bulletproof ones when they died. Fox team coverage for you now. Catherine Herridge, live in Washington on what clues the devices these suspects used may actually give investigators. But first, Trace Gallagher, live at the scene in California. So, Trace, what led investigators to this home in Redlands?
Well, led them to the home in Redlands, Gretchen, was that tip they got yesterday. Remember, in the early going of this shooting, that name came out, Saeed Farouk, and investigators quickly got the address and the name of him, and that led them to the house. They went by, they checked out the house, and of course, that led to the high-speed car chase. Boy, Gretchen, you talk about at the news conference a short time ago when they were announcing the explosive list that you just ran down along with the ammunition, a lot of eyebrows raised, which is why police believe they were fully capable to pull off yet another attack. And in fact, the initial attack could have been a lot worse because on top of those IEDs, that bundle of pipe bombs you mentioned that was held together and is apparently supposed to be detonated by that radio-controlled car, also 1,600 unused rounds of ammunition. They were truly on a mission, as the FBI said. They also cleared up a couple of points in the news conference. One of them, the reason why the rental car that was involved in that shootout had Utah plates was in fact because it was a rental car, and there were no GoPro cameras on the killers as they went into the regional center. But of course, as you mentioned at the top, the big focus here continues to be the home the suspects lived in. We know that Saeed Farouk rented that house about 5 or 6 months ago along with his wife, his grandmother, and his baby daughter. Police went in there with battering rams. They exploded the windows. They used a robot to go in there and blow up some of the dozen IEDs that you talked about. Neighbors, in the weeks leading up to this, neighbors reported suspicious activity like them being in the garage working late at night, boxes continually being delivered. They thought about turning them into authorities or at least notifying authorities, but in the end they decided not to. Listen to what else investigators pulled out of that house.
We took our time in securing it, making sure we went in that house. We cleared it safely. That's where we discovered the other pipe bombs, and I think some other evidence, computer evidence, cell phones, things like that have been recovered from there in various other places.
Yeah, things like that, the cell phones, the computers, all very important because clearly the focus now is they want to find out who is or was this couple in contact with in the weeks, maybe the months leading up to this attack. This clearly was well planned, as the FBI said. Did they have any funding? Did they have any training? Did they get any help? Those are the questions right now that are paramount for the investigators at the scene of the home where they lived. Gretchen.
Trace, great report. Thank you. Meantime, analysts now looking at Saeed Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, trying to unravel the mystery of their past, specifically, as Trace just mentioned, their social media footprint and internet activity. Who were they talking to? And which will it be? A case of workplace violence, Islamic terrorism, or both? Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge, live for us in D.C. So, Catherine, what have you learned up till this hour?
Well, Gretchen, 3 separate sources tell Fox News one of the highest priorities right now is understanding the couple's relationship, their travel patterns, and whether she turned him to terrorism. A short time ago, the FBI confirming Saeed Farook traveled to Pakistan and returned to the U.S. with his future wife in July 2014, and she came in on a K-1 visa that allowed her to enter the country and marry Farook within 90 days. Investigators are also building a timeline for their relationship and mapping out their overseas contacts in Pakistan as well as Saudi Arabia, reaching out to foreign intelligence services to determine if the female suspect was on their radar, especially those in Pakistan. The FBI also confirmed that electronics belonging to the couple have been seized, including thumb drives, computers, and cell phones, and they're now being flown to the FBI Specialty Lab in Quantico, Virginia, which is used for the digital exploitation of media, and it's done so in the highest priority cases.
The digital media is incredibly important because we are trying to determine the motive. We do not yet know the motive. We cannot rule anything out at this point. And we're hoping that some of that digital media exploitation will help us and assist us in obtaining some of that.
A short time ago, a source who has been briefed on the investigation confirmed to Fox News that Saeed Farook was in contact with individuals who had been the subject of FBI terrorism investigations, but at the time he made contact with them, the FBI cases had already been closed, Gretchen.
Very interesting. So what does the physical evidence say about possible terrorism ties?
Well, I think it's significant that a short time ago, the White House spokesman said the FBI is directing the investigation because of the evidence on the ground.
The FBI has taken the lead in this investigation because of the possibility that this was an act of terrorism.
And based on that news conference, the residence was a bomb-making factory, and the design using explosives strapped to remote-controlled toy cars. This is the signature of the Al-Qaeda magazine Inspire that teaches would-be jihadists to build bombs at home.
It's my understanding that somehow it was 3 pipe bombs that were attached together, somehow attached to this remote control car, and it was designed that the remote control device would somehow trigger or set that device off. We don't know if they attempted to do that and it failed or what the story is.
The FBI assistant director also confirmed at that news conference that they are looking hard at Inspire magazine, but I would emphasize that ISIS has taken some of those online instructions and essentially ripped them off, plagiarized them, and distributed them to their followers as well. And just as a final footnote, this kind of remote control toy car panel was the detonation mechanism that was used in the Tsarnaev brothers' pressure cooker bombs in Boston. And this is very much that Inspire homemade magazine, make a bomb in the kitchen of your mom recipe, if you will.
Yeah, we're going to dig deeper into that in a little bit. Catherine, thanks for the reporting.
You're welcome.
Live look now as officers search the home of the suspects as we speak. Well, that's actually the Capitol, but there's the home. As we mentioned, they're already finding a staggering amount of firepower, including pipe bombs and thousands of rounds of ammo. Roughly 300 officers are responding to this investigation. Fred Fleitz is a former CIA analyst, now a senior fellow with the Center for Security Policy. Fred, great to have you back on The Real Story. The real story here is going to be who the heck these people were talking to and whether or not they were radicalized, whether the wife radicalized this guy, and what they were doing in Pakistan, right?
That's right, Gretchen. I think intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, they have to figure out how this couple became radicalized. My concern is that they are being controlled somehow by an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda terrorism person, similar to the way that the Fort Hood shooter was. And I mean, if that's possible, there could be more terrorists like that out there.
Right, because that was Anwar al-Awlaki, the U.S.-born terrorist who the Fort Hood shooter was in touch with. Certainly could be others like that. But what about the people right here at home, Fred? I want to read you a quote from the New York Times, and this is a scary part about all this. The Bureau has 900, meaning the FBI, open inquiries related to the Islamic State. One day of surveillance on a single target might involve 30 agents and analysts or more. Fred, the real story here is that we don't have enough FBI agents right now funded to be looking into all of this homegrown terror. And you add into the mix that these two were not supposedly being watched.
There has to be an assessment of whether this was an intelligence failure. What red flags were missed? Why were they not on the various terrorist lists? And then there's the instance where apparently one of their neighbors saw suspicious activity and did not report it. I think that is a big deal. Americans have to take up the the recommendation, if you see something, say something.
Yeah, but you know what they said? They said that they didn't want to, overemphasize. They were worried about being or not being politically correct.
They were worried about racial profiling. Okay, I understand that, but man, if someone had spoken up and said they saw this suspicious activity, the police could have found this bomb factory and 14 people would be alive today.
Yeah, I want to just go through some of that list again that was found, because in your mind, Fred, were they planning other attacks? Look, they had 12 pipe bombs. They had hundreds of tools used to construct these IEDs. We have reports now of neighbors seeing them up late at night in their garage. They had all this ammo, thousands of rounds of ammo. What else do you think they were going to do?
We should stop talking about whether this was radical Islamic terrorism. It clearly was. We should be considering, was this another Paris-style attack? And that's what I think that was coming here. For some reason, whatever they were planning, they didn't carry out. I think they had something much bigger in mind, and for some reason, they didn't go through with it.
Okay, so where do we stand now as Americans? What should we be thinking about with regard to potential other attacks?
I mean, I think that there's always a potential for attacks. We actually have very good security and intelligence services. But I mean, at the end of the day, the big concern I have is that we have to treat this as an ideological war. And we had to embrace moderate reformers and people who want to address in the Muslim community this problem. That's what Dr. Judy Jasser, I know you know Dr. Jasser,
yes,
said very clearly. This is a problem within the House of Islam. That's what the president has to say.
All right. We will continue to wait for that. Fred Fleitz, thank you. Multiple crime scenes in California. We're going to ask a former Iraq-Afghanistan bomb tech about all those materials found at the scene and the home of the suspects and why those items could point to terror. And San Bernardino police pulling out all the stops in yesterday's rampage, calling in the department's armored vehicles like the one you see. Well, that's the SUV. But, they had all those armored vehicles as well. But here's the real story on that. A lot of police departments are losing those armored vehicles now. In fact, Oakland County is losing theirs today. Why?
East San Bernardino, multiple shots fired. We need a Bearcat. We need medical aid.